Hello everyone, Wild Philosophy here. So our last few videos have been rather serious, so I figured I would take the opportunity to talk about a rather amusing niche issue in philosophy relating to the philosopher Alexius Meinong Ritter von Raschursheim and the problem of fictionals. Now, the problem of fictionals in philosophy refers to an issue with classifying the ontology of a fictional character. So if you remember from our earlier video on what is practical wisdom, ontology is the branch of philosophy which deals with the study of being. And since we can, again, teach best by example, the best example that demonstrates what exactly we mean when we talk about the problem, the ontology of fictional entities, is the sentence, Sherlock Holmes is not a wizard. Now this is a true sentence, but the problem is, how can we explain why? On the one hand, the issue confronting us is that Sherlock Holmes does not exist. I can say whatever I want about Sherlock Holmes, but there is no Sherlock Holmes. And thus, we are inclined to say that Sherlock Holmes does not exist is an unclassifiable statement. It's not true or false, because it doesn't have any referent. On the other hand, this leads us into clearly absurd territory, because we all know the idea of Sherlock Holmes being a wizard is silly if you picture it in your head here, and we can use other examples. Say we had a TV show where Darth Vader was an accountant, Sherlock Holmes was a wizard, Merlin appeared as a police officer. Like, it would be utterly nonsensical to watch from the perspective of the audience. None of the characters' personalities would mesh with what we know the character should have as a personality. So we thus have an issue where we're inclined to say that fictional objects have some ontological status, but we don't know how to classify that ontological status because we don't want to say that they exist, and we don't want to say that it doesn't matter. Now, one of the more intriguing responses to this problem, although strictly speaking it was not designed for this problem, is the philosophy of the aforementioned Alexius Meinong Ritter von Raschursheim, popularly called Alexius Meinong, because the latter half of that name is impossible. And Alexius Meinong is unique for having devised a metaphysical system whereby being and existence are separate, and existence is a subordinate property of being. So that might sound a little complex if you're not well schooled in philosophy, and that's fair. The gist of it is that there are entities that have being, such as a unicorn, because they are describable. We can identify a definite object that is a unicorn, and a list of things that are not unicorns, such as narwhals and street lamps. And yet the unicorn does not exist. So the unicorn has being, but it lacks the property or the characteristic of existence. So philosophers often treat existence as if it were a property like hair color or the language you speak. And this is very weird philosophy because it involves positing a third realm of reality, basically, which consists entirely of entities who have being because they're describable and yet lack any and all existence. It's called the Meinongian jungle, filled with golden mountains and castles of glass and three-toed dinosaurs, that's a bad example. Flying books. I can go on. Like, the list of entities that do not exist but that I can describe is infinite in number. It's limited only by my capacity to sit here naming them, right? A dancing and singing edition of Charles Dickens' Hard Time, right, to give a more specific example. A book that only consists of the third sentence of all of Shakespeare's plays. Admittedly, well, yeah, that gets into more troublesome waters because that's actually an object that could theoretically exist. It just doesn't exist yet, whereas a fictional entity should be an entity that just can't exist. Like, there's no way Sherlock Holmes can exist. Maybe someone can copy him. Yeah, so there are a lot of issues with Alexius Meinong's philosophy. Again, the fantastical world he posits is one of them. It's basically a third or fourth realm of, like, potentially fifth if you happen to be a Platonic theist, in which case you're already positing so many realms. And yet at the same time, it presents a really intriguing worldview because it allows one to agree that there is such a thing as a unicorn. Because the unicorn has being, the unicorn just doesn't exist. I am Wild Philosophy for heart, home, and honor.